everyone, and once again, welcome to the state aid or the North Carolina Scholarship and the project that's been going on for several years as far as to improve the state aid monies available for student scholarships that we've been working on for several years. I'm very grateful that we have the State Education Assistance Authority here with us today, and they will be sharing their knowledge and their information and the plans similar to what was shared at NACASPA a couple of years ago. And giving some updates for that. We also have Patrick Crane here with us too, and from the system office, and he'll be sharing some of information concerning this project as well. Without doing introductions at this very moment, I think what I'd ask is as our presenters begin their presentation, please just introduce yourself. That way everybody will know who they're speaking with. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to Andrea Poole from SEAA.
Thank you, JW. Good morning, everyone. I know that I have met some of you, but let me reintroduce myself. So I'm the Executive Director of the State Education Assistance Authority. I have been in this role for like 3 days, over 2 years. Before that, I was at the Community Colleges System Office, where I was the Deputy Chief of Staff and the VP for Strategic Initiatives. So I'm going to attempt to share some slides. It worked just a few minutes ago, so hopefully it will work again. I'm going to give sort of the basic overview of how we got where we are and basically where we are. Kevin Lineberry on our team will then talk more specifically about what the grant will look like. And then I think Dr. Crane will talk a little bit about, I think, what JW just said. And then Mary Shuping will back clean up. I think most of you know Mary Shuping. She was at the Community College System Office for years. She is now our Director of Governmental and External Affairs. And she'll talk a little bit about the public information campaign that is tied to this grant. Kevin looks like he is having some technical difficulties, so he may come in here and stand next to me while we do that presentation. We'll see if we need to do it the old-fashioned way. So let me give a chance to share these slides. Okay, so you should see the regular PowerPoint, and now I'm going to screen share in just 1 second. Okay, is everybody good? I've lost the Teams view, but can you all see my slides?
Yes, everything looks great, Andrea.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So, as a reminder, we are talking about the consolidation and simplification of public higher education grants. This should be familiar to all of you, and I think some of you have seen this. We probably used it in NACASPA. We've used it at Ed Oversight, but just in case, wanted to go one more time through what the problem was. And how we got to this solution. So the problem, state-funded public higher education financial aid programs, both for community college students and UNC students, are complicated, confusing, and unpredictable. They're also funded, which is a little bit behind the scenes, from a couple different funding sources. The lottery scholarship went to community college and UNC students, but each sector also had their own program. And so this shows both where the funds were coming from, the community college grant being almost entirely a sheet fund with a little bit of general fund for administrative purposes, and the lottery scholarship being, of course, a lottery scholarship funded. The solution. So we talked about, and you just heard about the study group. I happen to have the report with me in my office. That was the report from the Joint Steering Committee of the Student Aid Study Group, and I did a quick scan of participants on this call. It looks like Rosemary Kelly and Lisa Kortoff are both on. They were part of the community college representatives for that study group. There were a bunch of folks from both sectors that worked on this. And one of the recommendations from that study group was this consolidation. So it was a top legislative priority for SEAA as well as UNC and community colleges, and it was put in the 2021 budget. What it does is blend those 3 scholarships into one, and directs the 2 presidents to jointly develop a formula and payment schedule that's consistent, transparent, and focused on student need. I will also give a shout out to Lisa Kortoff. I also have in my office the 2010 report, so this is not a new idea. In 2010, there was a work group legislatively directed that recommended essentially the same thing. But it did not happen back in 2012 or 2010. But we are getting ready to do it finally for 2023, 24. So those slides should have been familiar to everyone from at least from NACASFA, but I just wanted to run through that one more time. So I think we are going to, Kevin, are you on yet? If not, if Mary could go run and get Kevin and bring him into my office, it's probably the simplest thing to do. I will start on implementation slides. So the rollout is for the 23-24 academic year. The scholarship is designed with an existing grant fund. So this is important, I know, particularly for the community colleges, to know that it's within existing grant funds and sector funding is protected. You'll hear us say that a lot. You heard us say that a lot at NACASFA. We're going to continue to say that a lot because we know how important the different timing is in the application cycles of the two sectors. And there being a lot of concern that UNC could conceivably use up the money before community college students have the opportunity to apply. But the way that the program is structured, there are walled off reserves behind the scenes, nothing students ever need to worry about, but walled off funding behind the scenes to make sure that the community college funds are protected. But they have agreed, the sectors have agreed on a consolidated payment schedule. The budget also provides funds for a public awareness campaign that will inform students, families, and high schools about the simplified grant. And Mary will talk a little bit about that later. The state-funded need-based aid is also based on the Pell eligibility. So in 24-25, we're talking about 23-24 today, so next year. But for 24-25, we'll have to shift, as you all know, from expected family contribution to the student aid index. So that's one of the things that we'll be working on this spring. Once 23-24 is done and all baked into the computer systems, we'll be shifting to what do we do for the following year. And these are the basics for what the program will look like. So there's a base guarantee. The idea is that students from families with AGIs under 75,000 who have financial need with an EFC of under 7,500 will be guaranteed to receive at least 2,800 in state and federal aid at the community colleges or 5,000 in state and federal aid at UNC. Most students will receive more, but the guarantee is the 2,800, which is about tuition and fees at the community colleges, or 5,000, which is not quite tuition and fees at the UNCs, but is what is affordable. Then there is, as I mentioned, a need-based supplement. So additional aid is available for the lowest income students in both systems. And that is based on need and the cost of attendance. So again, AGI under 75,000, EFC under 7,500 will guarantee at least $2,800 in state and federal aid. So we're using the Pell Grant there, as well as the state aid, or 5,000 for UNC plus the supplement. One of the key things that'll be important for your transfer students is that the eligibility guidelines will be the same. So they'll start at a community college, they'll be eligible for the grant. They'll still be eligible for that grant when they go to the UNC system. The dollar amount that they get would be different, but they would continue to receive that grant through their transfer process. So a little bit about terminology. Because
I'm here, Andrea.
Excellent. Kevin, take over.
Yes, excellent. Sorry, my computer crashed the moment I logged into the meeting, so I apologize, but I'm here. So want to talk a little bit about terminology. There's been a lot of questions about this. NC Scholarship is the name of the 23-24 consolidated grant. So the NC Scholarship replaces the Education Lottery Scholarship, the Community College Grant, and the UNC Need-Based Grant. So NC Scholarship. NC Guarantee is the promise of at least 2,800 in combined state and federal aid for eligible community college students. So scholarship is the name of the scholarship, and NC Guarantee is the program name, if you will. And it's achieved through combining Pell Grant and North Carolina scholarship funding. And Mary will talk a little bit more about this and our direction moving forward in just a little bit. Next. So it comes as no surprise, we have some continuing elements within the program. So students will still need to meet North Carolina residency, We'll still have the return of funds for withdrawing students policy. The current one that we have will still be in place for this next year. We'll still have the semester limits on state aid. Satisfactory academic progress requirements, as they have been, will still be in place. And CFI processes through the state grant portal will remain in place. CFI has programmed the new payment schedule for 23-24 in there. So there won't be any changes to the way you're certifying students at this point or the disbursements. So continuing on with the state grant portal as it is, just the new scholarship will be in that state grant portal. And again, that's programmed. So the other thing we'll have, as always, is the Pell and North Carolina Scholarship Payment Chart with the North Carolina Scholarship Award listed by EFC. So imagine your community college payment chart. We'll have the EFC, we'll have Pell, and then we'll have the North Carolina Scholarship amount for you. So since we have the new Pell amounts, those charts have been updated, and we anticipate getting those out to you within the next week or two, probably as soon as we can. You'll notice on the chart, we'll still have awards for full-time, 3/4 time, and half-time enrollment. And next slide. So looking at the broad program parameters, again, Andrea's mentioned the AGI cap of 75,000, the EFC cap of 7,500. So all students with an AGI of 75,000 and an EFC of at least 7,500 or less are eligible for the scholarship. The guarantee amount between Pell and North Carolina funds is $2,800. The maximum supplement amount with North Carolina funds is $2,200. And pay attention to that maximum supplement amount. The supplement is not $2,200 across the board. That's the maximum. And we'll get into a little bit more detail on how that works in a minute. And related to that, the supplement EFC slope starts at 4,500 EFC and it ends at the 7,500 EFC. So not guaranteed 2,200 all the way down. It does slope starting at 4,500 to 7,500. So next slide. So I'll give you a minute to let this set in. Those of you who attended the NCASA presentation will remember this. It's the same concept that we presented there, but this is the real live version or the actual numbers. So if you look on the x-axis, we have the amount of funding. So Pell Grant 7,395. The supplement, the full supplement and guarantee of 5,000. Again, that makes up the 2,800 base guarantee and the 2,200 maximum supplement. The guarantee itself of 2,800, and then just noting here that the average tuition and fees in 21-22 was $2,484. So if you're looking at this, the blue obviously is Pell, the green is the supplement, and the yellow is the guarantee. So the blue Pell, green supplement, yellow guarantee, and the green and the yellow represents state funds. So if you're looking at this, think about it in an EFC chart. So as 0 to 24 EFC, the student's basically going to have their Pell Grant. From a 2401 to a 4500 EFC, between Pell and the state grant, which is the guarantee and the supplement, students will receive at least $5,000. Once you get to the 4501 EFC through the end of the payment chart, the amount is at least $4,900 at that 4501 EFC and then decreases by $80 in each EFC row until the end. So at 4501, the amount would be $4,900 between the funds, and then it would decrease by $80 in each EFC band until the end. So at the very end, the guarantee will kick in, and the students at the very end up to 7,500 would receive at least $2,800. You'll notice that the EFC Pell cuts off at 66.56, and so that is all working together.
And Kevin, I imagine everybody on this call already knows you, but since we're recording for the record, could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, sorry about that. I'm Kevin Lineberry. I've worked in the community college system for 16 years before coming to NCSCAA in financial aid, and I'm the Deputy Director for Higher Education Programs.
Great, thank you. So SCAA folks will pause here. And I don't know if JW, if you wanted to take questions in the middle or if Patrick should go next.
Well, maybe we should pause here. This is a good stopping place. I haven't seen any questions in the chat box except for the question about sharing of slides and recording. And yes, we will share these slides, and we will send out a link to the recording as well. So if you want to take a chance here, if you would like to put a question in the chat or go ahead and unmute and ask your question, feel free to do so. We'll pause for about 10 seconds or so. All right, Andrea and Kevin, you guys must just be amazing in your presentation style.
Or we threw an awful lot at you. So if the questions come later, you all know where to find us.
That's
Yes,
right. We will pause for questions at the end as well. And of course, we're all available for questions if something comes to mind later in the week or the months to come. So at this time, we'll turn the mic over to Dr. Patrick Crane.
Thanks, JW. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick Crane. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives with the North Carolina Community College System Office. Thank you to Kevin and Andrea for walking through this and really framing up how this will work for the community college system. So I think this chart is, while complicated, has a lot of explanatory power about who receives these funds, how this need-based aid program works. And the one thing that I want to mention today before turning it over to Mary is that we are cognizant of the fact that in this transition from the current need-based aid funding models to this funding model, there will be some students who will lose eligibility for need-based financial aid. And so what we have done as we've run various models in partnership with SEAA and our colleagues at UNC is we've reserved funding so that any student who is currently eligible and receiving these funds, if they are enrolled next year during this change, they can still receive financial aid for the next year. We want to make sure that this is a smooth transition. We want to make sure that students are held harmless during this period of transition, even as we're developing something that needs to work in a consolidated way across sectors, so that regardless of which institution students start in and which institution they transfer to, they will still have the same ability to access this need-based aid program. And so in the models that we've run, we know that we need to set about $3 million aside in order to make sure all of those students can be held harmless next year. We have budgeted for that. We've actually taken a pretty fiscally conservative approach to this this program right now, because we know that the worst case scenario would be if students felt like they were guaranteed funding and were told they were guaranteed funding and they didn't receive it. And so we're going to work very closely with SEA on this to see how the uptake of this grant is. We'll make any adjustments after this first year as needed, but we are very confident that we have funding set aside to cover any student who transitions from this year to next year, and that they can maintain their eligibility to receive these funds. And as the program moves forward, these will be the set requirements. So we're only budgeting for 1 year of transition, but any additional funds that we have unspent move forward with us. So we'll be able to absorb an increase in enrollment. And I know Mary will talk about the campaign, but I think based on the research that was done for the first report that Andrea held up and looking at what works in other states, we think that this is going to enable us as a system, as a state, to communicate much more clearly and effectively to students about the aid that's available to them, and are optimistic that based on the trends in other states, this should lead to increases in enrollment across the system. So I will stop there and turn it over to Mary.
Well, I
Thank
think
you,
this
Patrick.
Mary, I'm interrupting you. I apologize. this might be another place for us to maybe pause again to see if there's any questions. If you feel like you'd like to unmute your microphone or put something in the chat. I am going to put you on the spot a little bit, Patrick. I cut off Mary, so I guess I can put you on the spot as well. Can you share an example of somebody who a student that we might be protecting during this transition period to kind of maybe illustrate what you were describing?
Absolutely. So a student who is currently receiving need-based aid but has an estimated family contribution of 8,000, for example, they would not be eligible under this new model, but we would want to make sure that they received aid for the next year so that they're held harmless during the transition period. And any of the students who are losing eligibility, they're all above 75,000 adjusted gross income and 7,500 estimated family contribution. And the actual mechanism by which we will provide this aid to the colleges, we're still discussing options internally. I know talking a lot with Brandy Andrews about this, and we'll work with SEAA. I know they've done this before with the UNC system, so we're likely going to just make funds available directly to colleges, along with information about students' aid eligibility, and then colleges should be able to provide these funds. Again, that's what we're thinking at this point, but we need to have some additional internal conversations before we finalize that.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Patrick. That was very helpful. And we do have one question in the chat. I believe that question would be for SEAA. I'll read the question just for the recording purposes. The question is, I'm noticing the word guarantee in the title. Does this mean we won't have the problem we have now with NCCCG being not funded during the year? We had several students this spring who only qualified for state grants and couldn't receive it until last week. And I think, Andrea, you indicated you would take that. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, I can take that. So hopefully, if we do our modeling correctly, that will not happen. But the guarantee we're sort of soft rolling it because we haven't done this before. So we are working, Mary will talk a little bit more about the public awareness campaign and how we're launching the idea. However, one of the things that we will introduce as part of this is a priority deadline, a date, not a deadline, a priority date. It is a very soft and very friendly term. The idea, though, is that we will come up with or identify a source of money that will be a backstop on that guarantee, so that if a student files their FAFSA before that priority date, we will make sure that they get at least up to the 2,800. That doesn't guarantee the supplement money, and that's part of why there's a guarantee of up to 2,800, but then there's this other money, is we just aren't sure what will happen. If we have a repeat of that 2009 to 2011 time, we've got to be able to handle, particularly on the community college side, the really volatile enrollment that we know can happen. So what's guaranteed will be the up to 2,800. It might mean that some students aren't getting that supplement if we get into that time. And it's guaranteed for those students that file their FAFSA for the community colleges by August 15th. So that is really more or less the start of classes. The UNC system has a much earlier date. They're going with June 1. We know that that won't work. We are trying to be simple, but we also simple and responsive to the differences in the system. So for the community colleges, it will give you certainty that you don't have now, that students that file their FAFSA by August 15th will get some money. Ideally, the full amount, including the supplement, but at least up to that 2,800. What it doesn't change is after that point, we might have to turn money off. So you can have certainty up till August 15th that your students will get something. You'll still, though, have throughout the course of the year and into the spring that we might have to turn off awarding if we've used up all the funds. Clearly, we'll still award so long as there's money in the bucket. What we would like to get to once we have some more history is, would we be able to extend that guarantee into the spring semester? Would we be able to do some better modeling and have multiple priority dates? We just don't have enough history right now. We're in the process of adding to our staff that can do that kind of work, so that we'll have that analysis going forward. We just can't guarantee it right now. There's just not enough history, and we don't have a bucket of money to use to do that. So we're focused right now on, if you file by August 15th, you'll at least get 2,800. Ideally, you'll get that full amount in the picture. And so we hope that will give you, those 8 officers, just a little bit more certainty, because we know there might be, right now, sometimes we'll have to turn off awarding in August or July, just based on what's happening. So that won't happen. It's after August. Yes, it still might get turned off. I think the other feature that I don't know that we flagged as we were talking through what's different in this program is the 15+ category. I think Kevin talked about what continues. One of the things that's a big change from the community college grant is there won't be a 15+ category. There was not on the lottery, there was not on the UNC side, and that's one of the things that changed to make it stable or consistent across. That was a piece of feedback that we actually heard at the NCASPA conference. I don't know how many years ago that was. Whenever we went to NCASPA and we all talked, one of the things that we heard from the community college folks that were there was that they did not feel it was particularly impactful in changing student enrollment behavior. We don't have the mandate to have to continue that, so that's something we dropped. It's a group of students that might have a loss as well, but we also know they'll be moving along sooner because they're enrolled in 15+. So hopefully a minimal impact long-term, and something that hopefully will be useful to you. It gave us a little bit more flexibility to do some other things then as well.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. That was a great explanation, and thank you for bringing back up the 15+. I appreciate that. We do have another comment in the chat, and I'm thinking that this is probably SEAA again. The comment is, I am not understanding the supplemental in relation to the grants. Can you explain this a little more? Are there other grants that make up the difference?
Kevin, do you want me to do it or would you like it?
I can attempt it and you can
Go for it.
fill in. So the guarantee is $2,800 and the supplement is $2,200. So the maximum amount of funding is $5,000. So when an EFC starts at 2401 to 4500, a student would receive the base guarantee of $2,800 and the maximum supplement of $2,200. So they both will be represented as one number on your payment chart. So when the payment chart is released, this will be easier to understand because you'll see the EFC, you'll see Pell, and then you'll see the North Carolina Scholarship, which is made up of the guarantee and the supplement. So there's a portion, again, from 2401 to 4500 where the student would qualify for both the supplement of 2,800 and the max guarantee of 2,200, which is 5,000. And then from there, from 4501 EFC up to 7500 EFC, we have a slope. So the supplement and the guarantee would reduce by about $80 by EFC range till the end of the payment schedule at 7500. So a few students at the end of the payment schedule would just receive the guarantee of 2,800, but most students would receive more than that through the payment schedule. But it depends on that slope when it starts at 4500 through the 7500 EFC. Does that help, Beverly?
Yeah, and Kevin, maybe one part of that question, I think, and I may be reading too much into it, is what is the funding source of the yellow and green state aid areas? Where's that money coming from if it's not coming from Pell?
So that's the state money. So think about the state grant as sort of a spring green, yellow green, right? If you combine the green and the yellow together, that's the NC scholarship. That's the state money. That is the new version of community college grant and lottery all mushed together in the beautiful plaid in the earlier slide. The reason that we have them broken out is because of that guarantee message. So if we're going to go out and say to students, we promise you at least $2,800, we need to set that at a level that we can do that even in enrollment booms. The green is the part where we'd like to hold it stable, but we know we might need to move it based on what's happening with enrollment from year to year. We will ideally never have to change it during a year. Ideally, everybody that files by August 15th will get the full amount of green plus the yellow, but we'll go out and promise to students on, what we are talking about being fiscally conservative here to make sure this works. Promise the students the yellow, they should also be getting the green. Altogether, it's the same funding source. So to get specific, it's a combination of general fund, lottery fund, and a sheet fund all blended together. But from your perspective, you'll get one grant. You won't get a green grant and a yellow grant out of the CFI system. You'll just get one. But when we're talking about it, Mary will get into the public awareness campaign a little bit. We'll be promising the yellow and saying, and there's other funds available, and then students will get the green on top of it. Does that help?
I think so. Thank you, Andrea. And Beverly said, I think so in the chat. And then we have people getting religious saying hallelujah about the 15 plus in the chat as well, and the elimination of that. We also have one more question, and I think this is for you, Patrick. Question about the hold harmless group, so to speak, and that is the smoothing and the safety net we're kind of putting in place. Are you envisioning a supplemental payment chart for continuing students who are not eligible under the new cutoffs of 75,000 and 7,500?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the short answer is we haven't figured that part out yet. It could be a supplemental payment chart as described. Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe another way to do it that I think you've done before would be to provide a report with the amount of aid that your students received this year. So you can look at them next year and see what they received now. So if they don't meet these eligibility requirements, you could use that to make a determination of awarding aid at the college level. So we need to talk through this in more detail at the system office and in partnership with SEA to figure out what will be best for students and easiest for you. And that's the lens that we'll be using to try and determine this.
That's right. So UNC this year, if you may recall, one of the holdups was that they were not using federal methodology for the UNC need-based grant. They had a different formula. And so they needed to shift to federal methodology. When they had new money come in the 21 budget for their program, they thought that was a good time to go ahead and do the federal methodology shift. So they didn't have to do all of those things at the same time. So they had students that were winners and students that were losers from that shift. So they did smoothing, is what we called it on the UNC side. They did some smoothing money this year. They had guidelines about how to use it. And CFI ran a report that showed them how much students had received the prior year. And they were allowed to use that money up to how much the students had received the prior year. So there's still some judgment calls that the aid officers will need to make. Students have changing financial circumstances. The reason, there might be a reason why they now qualify for less than you don't want to give them smoothing money. There might be a reason that you do want to give them the smoothing money. So they have a list and they use that to make their own awards. We're talking with them again about how to do it this year because they now have more changes, and we'll essentially do the same thing for them, and making sure that it's a student that received the grant in the prior year is one of the reasons why just a payment schedule will be difficult. It will be simpler, we think, for you to have a list from CFI of who received the grant, just to make sure that you're only giving the smoothing money to students that have already been receiving the grant, if that makes sense.
I'm pausing just a second to make sure. I think that's our questions. All right, so now I cut Mary off about 15 minutes ago. And so we'll turn that mic back over to Mary. And again, we will have questions again at the end here that you can ask anything that maybe you couldn't unmute fast enough or type fast enough. But Mary, let's hear what you have for us.
Okay, thank you, JW. And as Andrea said, before coming to SEAA, I've been here about 2 years. I was the government relations person in the system office, representing the colleges over at the General Assembly. Sort of doing the same thing here, but Andrea has added communications to my job. And in that vein, I am responsible for working on the marketing campaign for the new consolidated grant. Pleased to say that after an RFP process, last week, we decided to award the vendor contract to APCO Worldwide Some of you may be familiar with them for the Your Higher Education campaign they did a few years ago on the Con Ed side of things. We will be meeting with them this week to sort of get started, consolidating this and making it easier for students and families is only good if the students and families know about it. So that's what APCO has been hired to do, is to help us think about how to best do that. Of course, there's going to be representation from some advisory committees that, of course, will have community college campus and system office representatives on that, as well as on the UNC side. I think what we're thinking about now, because right now, of course, we're talking about EFC, but going to a student aid index, a little bit down the road, is with the marketing campaign, doing a really deep dive, doing some focus groups, getting APCO's ideas and what they think the research should be to show what kinds of messages would most resonate with students and families about this consolidated grant. So we will just be kicking that off, as a matter of fact, this week. And what I can say to that is stay tuned. We hope to have a very robust campaign. And again, of course, it's always about letting students and families know how much money the state has invested. And certainly we hope that that will drive enrollment for you all as well as the UNC system. So any questions about marketing? Okay, great.
All right, thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. And so we'll kind of pause now and see if anybody has any questions for our presenters, regardless of the topic, and do our best to make sure that you understand what's going on. While you're thinking about potential questions, one thing I want to add is that this dialogue is the beginning of a dialogue and conversations. This is not a one and done type of thing. So you could expect, if we have any more information or any other updates, we'll probably communicate that through our normal financial aid updates that Brenda Burgess does. And if SEAA has any updates, then we'll just invite them to that communication. If we feel like it's something that's broader that needs to be updated to the group, then we'll also invite SEAA to my update with the student development administrators. So that will be our normal way of updating and keeping people engaged as far as the information, as any new information may become available. Another thing that I want to highlight as people are thinking is something that Mary mentioned, is we are forming 2 advisory groups. One advisory group to work with Mary and UNC and SEAA on that communication and that marketing kind of concept. To make sure we had that college level feedback. Also forming kind of a technical group of financial aid director expertise to talk about the student aid index and future changes as they become apparent. So we are wanting and covet your feedback and your ideas. So I've talked too much. I'll be quiet here and see if we'll give a pause for about 10 seconds to see if there's any questions either in the chat, or feel free to unmute your microphone. So we do have one question here in the chat. We are starting to get set up for the next academic year. When should we be expected to patches, or when should we expect patches and other updates for the new scholarship to come to the community colleges? That is a great question. We're just now starting to engage. I think it's Tracy on the SEAA side, right?
That's right.
And then the BSAs on the system office side. So that work is just beginning, and we don't have a date at this time. So I don't want to put Brandy or anybody on the spot. I think we're still working through that. Is that accurate, Kevin?
It is. Yep.
Okay.
Dr.
So
Kelly,
great question,
will-
Beverly. I'm sorry, I cut somebody off. Who did I cut off?
that's okay. It's Brandy. I was going to
Oh.
add, we have already actually prepared. Tracy and I had already started our conversations. And so we have already actually started preparing colleges for this. And we just completed our 23-24 financial aid annual setup classes. And we went through the setup that colleges need to do to make sure we can put this in place pretty quickly. So we're actually a little bit ahead of the ball game. So I would just remind colleges if they still need help to please put in a service request in the system office service portal, and we'll be glad to help any way we can.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Brandy. I love it when you're ahead of me and you save me from myself. All right. Any other questions or comments? Let's see, Joey has a question here. Would you all be willing to share the details of the new program so that we can update our websites and documentation? We're in the process of publishing our catalog, for example, and wanted to make sure we include the detailed information about the new programs. Is something beyond the slides is what you're looking for, or are you looking for something more than that, Joey? I saw Andrea shaking her head, so
Yeah,
go
so
ahead,
I
Andrea.
would imagine, given the amount of time that we here have been spinning around the difference between NC Scholarship and NC Guarantee and yellow and green, that maybe what would be helpful is some blurbs that you can use to replace the language that you've got right now. So we have a couple of sentences that explain it that we can share. But also, if you've got some specific thing that you would like to replace and you want to send that to us, we can help with the right language so that we're all using consistent information. Once the public awareness campaign is done, one of the things they'll do is provide packets or kit. I don't know the right word. I'm not a marketing person. Toolkit, something. They'll give you something that you can use. But in the meantime, we're happy to help with language.
And who's the best person for them to contact for that? First visit the CFNC website, or should they email somebody?
I think you all know Kevin the best of the three of us. So why don't you go through Kevin, but Mary and I will be happy to help with whatever language you need.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Great question, Joey. Lisa has another question. Forgive me if I missed this, but when will the state grant portal be ready to import state grant eligibility for 23-24?
It's my understanding that it will probably be ready this month in February. Well, not this month, it's January 31st, but in February for Tracy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. All right, great questions, everyone. Anything else? Okay, then I'll start bringing us to a close. Thank you very much to SEAA, and thank you, Patrick, for your expertise and sharing with us everything that is going on for these updates. As a reminder, we will be sending out the slides and a link to the video recording of this presentation. Further updates, as I mentioned earlier, will likely be through Brenda Burgess and her regularly scheduled webinars with the financial aid community. But if there's anything broader, then we definitely will get that out through the Student Development Association or through one of my updates. So thank you, everybody, for your time today. Thank you for the great questions. If you think of something after we hang up, which is inevitable, I think, feel free to reach out to us and let us know. We want this to be a successful program and to simplify things for students so that we can all better serve students. And so we definitely want to hear if that's not the case. So thank you, everybody, for your time today. And that will end us unless SEAA or anybody else has any other closing comments.
No, just thanks again for your time. We're really excited about this and excited that we're finally close to it happening. So
All right.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.